Hello, everyone. I am April Michelle Davis, Executive Director of the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors. You can find us online at NAIWE.com. That's NAIWE.com. The National Association of Independent Writers and Editors is a professional association for writers and editors with a focus on career building enrichment. Your membership includes a professional website designed with you in mind, convenient training administered by fellow editors and writers who have experience in your field, a sounding board of experts who are truly interested in your success, and much more. There are marketing opportunities, such as being featured on NAIWE's social media pages, the Freelance Life podcast, and in The Edge, NAIWE's monthly newsletter. You also receive discounts for professional development courses, software, and more. If you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to post them in the chat, or you can also send messages directly to me via the chat. As a quick introduction to myself, I am a freelance editor, indexer, and proofreader, and I've been working in the publishing industry for over 20 years. Today's guest is Brian Schwartz, NAIWE's self-publishing expert. Authorpreneur Brian Schwartz is the creator of the award-winning 50 Interview series. More than 500 authors have trusted Brian and his team to publish their work. The mission of Brian's practice is to bridge the gap between self-publishers and traditional publishing by applying the proven strategies and techniques of successful independent publishers. To meet this objective, Brian launched AuthorDoc in 2016 to provide authors with an all-in-one secure portfolio management tool to manage deadlines, extended teams, and critical resources. Brian is also the developer of PubWriter, a click-to-publish publishing platform used by authors to create their own web hubs for publishing, promotion, and sales. Okay, Brian, I am going to give you some controls.
Thank you, April. Let me share my screen. Well, thank you for having me on, April. I'm going to chat today about this concept of webifying your book, which I'm pretty passionate about. It's a direction I've taken my business in the last 5 years. And I'm going to show you some examples of how authors are using the web to increase value, grow sales, and connect with more readers. So I'm hoping, and I'll talk a little bit about my objectives. First, let's define what Webify your book is. Or how I define it. It's the process of expanding the value of your book far beyond the book itself. So the internet is a very, valuable and amazing resource, but I think that authors really, they don't utilize it as much as they could be. So I'm going to show you some examples of how you might want to think differently about using the web to increase the value of your book. All right, so my goal today is to open your eyes to new possibilities for your book on the web. I've dedicated myself to the practice of book publishing full-time since 2009 when I published my first book. So I've gone way past the 10,000 hours mark. And while there are an abundance of website developers out there, I think there's very few that I know of that have the depth in book publishing that I have, as well as that ability to build a website and integrate it with your book. So that's just my own little plug, because I typically don't do a very good job of telling you what I do and kind of what I want and what I can do for you. So you can check out, there's a link there to a page that has a bunch of example sites I've built for clients over the last few years. So if you want to take a look at that. So 5 good reasons to webify your book. The fact that you can take hyperlinks and put them on a web page, glossaries that have more definition for the topics in your book. And I'm going to show you examples of these. Of course, your bibliography, which includes resources that you may have used in your book. And all of that combined helps you really rank well on Google when they see it's not hidden just in your book. Like, you put this stuff up on a web page and it's no longer a secret. And these are just things that help draw attention to your book. 2, you can set up and offer revisions of your book and updates very easily, because we're talking about taking aspects of your book that you can update, and even maybe a PDF version if you wanted to offer that, and I'll show you an author who's doing that, to give people updated content. Also, one of the things that a lot of authors get hit with are these KDP quality notices that get reported to Amazon when there's a dead link in a book. So instead of filling your book with hyperlinks to websites that tend to go down because you have no control over them, like other sites that you don't run, it's much better to just point them to one URL that you have complete control over, that you can then update any links that go out anywhere else. So I'm a big proponent of just including a link to your web page anytime you need to point to a reference. You can secure your reader reviews. As you know, we'll talk a little bit about this. Amazon police are notorious for taking down reviews from your reviewers that you work so hard to get. So if you bring them to your website to post that review, you won't lose them. You still want them to post it on Amazon, but if you succeeded at getting someone to share a review, by all means, give them an opportunity to share it with you, and you can keep that and retain that as an asset. I'll show you an example where it's a great way to offer advanced copies of your book. Andy Weir, the author of The Martian, used it very successfully to build a fan base organically, which really launched his career. And you can offer exclusive content like printable PDFs, images that show much better on the web, of course, audio and video, which you can't put into a book. You can offer coaching courses and more. Here's even more reasons why you should consider Webifying your book. Of course, the upsell opportunity, we'll talk about that. Higher profit per sale through those upsells. And we're going to talk about why Amazon Marketing Services, the pay-per-click ads that you run on Amazon to promote your self-published book, the return on investment, the ROI, is getting harder and harder if you are only selling a book, because the profit margin on a book is not, as you know, very high. So if there's authors who are spending more money on those ads than you are because they have some bigger back-end profit than you do, you're going to find a very hard time competing with them. Also, to connect, of course, with your readers and gather analytics as far as what they're interested in. Future-proofing your content. I do think that the form of content in the future is going to change. It's going to continue to evolve. So you want to have that flexibility. And then lastly is just to become more findable off Amazon, and try to rank above Amazon on Google would be great, because they don't always have your best interest at heart. We'll chat more about that. So you are an author, but are you the authority in the eyes of Google? Because if someone goes to Google and they type in your name or the name of your book or the topic, are you showing up at the top of Google? So examples and case studies, and I think this is the best way to kind of dive into this, is just let's talk through some samples. So I was talking about glossaries, indexes, endnotes, bibliographies with the hyperlinks. So here's the glossary of a book that a client of mine did, and he's got links to the Wikipedia pages for a lot of these, so you can get into more depth into what these things mean. Of course, you don't have the ability to have hyperlinks in a glossary. Well, you do, but most likely this is going to be good for Google to have your glossary on your own website. This client over here, he took his entire back of the book index and put it on his web page or his website. So it's a list of topics contained in the book. And again, this is all the stuff that you want to have Google indexing, because if somebody's typing in a search term and that word is buried in your book somewhere, and Google has not indexed your book, you're not going to necessarily show up for that search. So I think it's a great way to use your back of the book index, and that goes with your endnotes and your bibliography as well. A really good strategy to keep in mind is that if your book has similarities with other books, and I am thinking nonfiction here, but even fiction, you want your book to show up on Google when people are searching for that book, right? You want to peg yourself to that book. And the best way to do that is to have links on your website to those books, because that's going to improve the odds that at some point Google's going to see that in a certain combination of search terms that just work in your favor. So the key takeaways: glossary includes links to Wikipedia articles, which is really helpful. You can continue to add to the glossary and your index whenever you want, so you don't have to go in and republish the book every time. And something you can do is give readers the ability to make a comment where they can request that you define additional terms. And then of course they can add additional resources you may not know about. So here's links to a couple of these pages if you want to check those out. So Brenda's the one that does these PDF updates for her clients. So she's now on the 15th edition of her book. And it's very time consuming, as you can imagine, to reformat, republish this every time she makes revisions. And these are pretty major revisions because it's the LinkedIn look and feel and how it functions is just continuing to evolve and change. So all the screenshots that she did for LinkedIn a year ago or 2 years ago aren't necessarily still applicable today. So she has to continually update her book. So one of the selling points of her book is that if you do buy it, you get the opportunity to get unlimited lifetime updates. So every time she updates this, you don't have to go out and buy a new copy or not. Maybe you're not sure you have the latest edition. You'll always have it when you buy it from Brenda. So the value of her book is increased because she's able to offer that update instantly. And of course, this allows her to collect email addresses of who her readers actually are. And then she just sends out an email blast when there's a new edition. So she has an opportunity to re-engage with her clients every time she releases a new edition. Talk about reviews and advanced reader copies. So in the case of Ed, he's worked hard to get these reviews, and not all of these review sites are able to even post Amazon reviews. So we're at least able to put it on his website. In the case of the advanced reader copy or starting to recruit beta readers, even before you've published your book, like we're doing for Doug, you have a big button that says, beta readers wanted. And anytime he has a conversation with someone, he can just send them to his website. They fill out a form, and now they're in our list of advanced readers. So as you know, Amazon is very aggressive at pulling down reviews. It's very frustrating. And this is really your most valuable sales asset. So this is another good reason to make sure you've got your own website and you have control over that. All right, so this is an interesting approach and idea. So Leroy has him and his co-author wrote the book to music. Like when they were writing the book, they actually had music playing. And he thought, why not give readers the ability to listen to the same music that they were using when they wrote the book to listen to while they're reading the book. So each chapter of the book has this QR code, and I think most of you know what those are. You can basically hit that with your cell phone, and if you've got a Spotify account, and even if you don't, it'll take you to a page where you can actually listen to the soundtrack for that chapter. And he's got these QR codes on every single chapter. And it's just kind of a novel way to get people engaged in your book. So that's one way to sort of take advantage of this for a fiction author. Another example for a fiction author, because I didn't want to slant this all towards nonfiction because it is easier to market a nonfiction book. But here's another example for fiction authors. Jimmy has this character, Sam Cloudstone, and he's got a series of 4 books, and they're shot and they basically take place around Texas. So we thought, why not include like an on location so people can see the cities and towns where the story takes place. Oh, I can see he gets outside of Texas too. So you could essentially sort of like what you would see for a movie, on location is where the story takes place. He's got a detailed persona or biography for each character in his book. So you can read a little bit more about the cast. And again, this is a fiction book, but we're sort of planting the seed that this could easily go and become a screenplay and be made into a series. And we've also been playing around with him blogging as the main character of the book. So, blogging, if you're a nonfiction author, makes a lot of sense. You're blogging as yourself. But for a fiction author, you can always blog as the character in your book and talk about sort of the same things that character would be experiencing in real life. So this book was very interesting when I came across it. I didn't publish this one. This is Wiley. But every single page of this book has a hyperlink to a page on a website that includes more content for every single page of the book. I was just kind of blown away at the depth that they went through to Webify this book, because it's just super enhanced. So you're buying a book, but in every single page, you're basically also buying an index to all of these pages. So if you want to check it out for yourself, you can go here and sign up and kind of see what they're doing. It's a lot of videos, but it's also a lot of reference examples and, I don't know, papers that they've written, and just sort of a never ending way to expand your book. And this is great if you are traditionally published, because as you know, you can't go back and revise this book unless you're Wiley. Even if you're the author and you scream at them to update the book, there's a cost involved in doing that. So in order to keep your book current and relevant, it's a great idea to move this towards adding additional content on the web. So I just mentioned each mentioned that. They've got audio and video, and they can, of course, update the content. Now, this author is doing a lot of things very well if you go to her website. So she's traditionally published as well. And when I kind of came to this, because I think I was listening to the audiobook, and in it she mentioned, take the braver but wiser pledge. And when you go there, you see a list of all these people who've also taken the pledge. So you know that you're not alone in reading this book. It's sort of, she's creating this community aspect with her readers very early in the process. And of course, she's one click closer. In this case, she's not asking you for your email address. So this is a little bit of an easier ask, maybe, because some people are protective about, what they want to actually give out. So this is just something that she can provide. She gets some feedback of how many people are reading their book and how many people are starting to engage with her. It's clear that, she's traditionally published, and as a lot of traditionally published authors, they don't make enough on the book sales alone, because the lion's share of that goes to the publisher. So she's got a pretty aggressive speaking and coaching practice, but I also noticed today she's got a $299 course, a digital course, and a $20 PDF on her website now. Well, of course, she gets 100% of that profit because you're buying it directly from her. And this would help justify a much higher spend on Amazon marketing services, on Amazon ads, because if the pay-per-clicks are getting up to $1, per click, and you can quickly see that it doesn't take long before you're losing money on the ads and Amazon's making all the money. But if a percentage of those translate into people who come over here to your website, buy the workbook or buy the course, you can easily justify continuing to spend money on ads. And that goes for Google ads, Facebook ads, anything else. You've got to consider and find ways to get more from your readers than just the sale of the book. All right, this is one we're working on now. This is a book of mantras, and they're spoken and they're sung, and there's music that goes with them. And clearly there's a lot lost in this book unless you actually hear the mantras. He does try to give you the pronunciation, but it's much better to give people the ability to hear the actual mantras as they're being read, and then they can listen to these at their convenience. So each chapter can have its own little playback system here, very doable. And you can make these hidden URLs through the QR code, but if you really want to password protect this stuff, you can do that as well. But this is an example of where a book that didn't have this audio portion would struggle for sure. So this one I want to talk a little bit about. And this is what I've been seeing. I mean, I think I spend more time on Amazon than anybody else, just because this is, what I do for a living. And of course, I'm constantly being bombarded by Amazon of things that they want me to buy. So I'm constantly getting new books recommended to me. This is a strategy that's been going on for years. And what you do is, this is right up in the front of the book, get your free gift. Click here and you'll get this free Q&A session, some kind of an enticement to bring people over to your website. But this is before you've even read the book. And for me personally, and I'm sure I'm not alone, but my bullshit sensor starts to go up right away when there's clickbait at the very front of the book. And it sort of predisposes me that there's going to be a lot of salesy stuff in this book, and that I'm really just a number to this author, that, I'm a profit center for them. And I think eventually, although these links are live on Amazon now, when you're on the Kindle book, I think Amazon's going to start to disable these. I just think it's inevitable, because they don't want people clicking away from Amazon.com. So at some point, these links are probably not going to be clickable anymore. But I think, in my opinion, it's much better if you wait till the end of the book or at some point in the book where you've already sort of, the reader's vetted you and is sort of on board with your concepts, your philosophy, and then invite them over to engage with you. And I think you're going to find you're going to get much better leads as a result. You're going to get readers who are really interested, as opposed to a lot of readers who probably are just going to click here, see what they can get for free, and quite honestly, never buy your book. So what did you achieve? I mean, if you're an internet marketer, I guess you can start bombarding them with spam, but that's not what I believe works anymore. And I just wanted to, throw that out there, that I think this is a very dated strategy. And although you still see this like crazy on Amazon, you just have to keep in mind that these books might have been published, 2-3 years ago, but of course they're still up there. So you're going to see a lot of these examples, but I just don't think this is a strategy I personally would go for. So best practices when you are building your website, make your site useful to increase the ease of access, right? To getting access to the things like, for example, the bibliography would be great if it's clickable, as opposed to me having to type in the name of a book to go find it. Make it as easy as possible for people, for your readers, to get access to the tools and the resources you provide. But don't make the mistake of giving them so much information that you've piqued their curiosity, and they don't need to buy the book anymore because their curiosity was satisfied, and they perhaps think they know enough, and they feel that, okay, I've gotten what I need to get just from this author's website, and they never buy the book. So don't make that mistake of giving so much information for free. If you follow the model that Wikipedia has, and I'll go into that in the next slide, is, they're one of the highest ranking sites in the world. And it's all because they're citing other resources that validate the information you read on a Wikipedia page. So if you've ever gone in to edit a Wikipedia page, you know that unless you are citing a credible resource, that update oftentimes gets reverted and pulled down. So you have to be able to provide evidence of any claims that you're making. So think about your site as Wikipedia and make sure you're linking to credible sources that back up your facts. Ignorance of SEO fundamentals will limit your reach. I'll give you a link where you can learn more about this, but I will tell you that SEO is a topic that we could talk about for hours. And I would just tell you there's some real basic fundamentals you need to be aware of. And if you ignore those, no matter how hard you work, your website's not going to rank well. If you're overwhelmed, remember the breadcrumb analogy. So this is a really easy way for me to explain to people what internet marketing is. Your book is the loaf of bread. And what you do with internet marketing is you're leaving breadcrumbs all over the web that lead back to your loaf of bread. Sometimes you're going to get breadcrumbs in high traffic areas. So you get onto a podcast that has maybe tens of thousands of listeners. Well, that's one breadcrumb, but it happens to be on the floor in a high traffic area. So you're going to get lots of people coming back to your loaf of bread. But otherwise, you're just dropping breadcrumbs everywhere you can to hopefully get recognized and noticed and bring people back to your loaf of bread. And I used to say, and I would still say this, never be more than a click away from a sale or whatever. You want to always make sure you're bringing people back to a page that has an intention on what you want them to do for you. Testimonials and reviews, the idea of give and receive. I think it's important that, if you don't have enough reviews and people saying nice things about you, you may want to think about who can you go give testimonials to. And then when, of course, if you do ask, and you may not even have to ask, you're going to get a better response. Personally, I give reviews for books that, really connect with me. So, and the author doesn't have to ask me. I just will go in and post a review because I know how important it is to them. But if they've worked hard, you can tell, and it's a good product, then I want to leave a good review. And no amount of marketing is going to make a bad book sell. So you have to also consider that if you can't get reviews, no matter what you do, you may need to go back and work on your book a little bit more. Reach out to everyone ask them to share your website, your book with others. I am talking about the website here. So the lessons from Wikipedia, again, whenever possible, you want to cite credible sources. I think a good way to look at your website is as a sort of repository of all the knowledge that you're continuing to gather to back up your book and the research that you're doing. Again, even if it's a fiction book, if it's a historical fiction book, you can use your website as this great encyclopedia and resource that you yourself will continue to go back and refer to. And believe me, you're going to get traction if you do that. Make sure you add backlinks from all the major social media sites. So like Facebook and LinkedIn, Twitter, like you want to make sure that you have a profile on all of these, not necessarily all of them, ones that you plan to use. And you know, this is expanding every day, but set up a author profile on these pages and make sure that you've got a link back to your website, because what Google sees is that if all these sites are pointing back to yours, that's sort of validation that your website is legit and it's a credible site. So YouTube is a big one, and I'll show you an example on that. So just, again, I'm getting more into Wikipedia now than I have in the past, and I'm learning that it's really intended to be the truthful side of things, because they want you to cite all of these credible, authoritative sources. And again, the higher ranking the site, the better. .edu sites are great. So if you can teach a class for university, make sure that in your bio, they link to your website. So this is the link I told you guys about, and I think April will make these slides available. But this goes into a lot more about SEO. It's a very deep topic, but I do go over sort of the basics of what you should know. Really, the main things is that your site is secure, so HTTPS, and that it's responsive, which means it's mobile friendly. And also there's something called a sitemap that you really need to have, because that's how Google knows what pages to index. And if you sign up for the Google Search Console, which used to be Google Webmaster Tools, you can basically submit any pages that you update to them and make sure that the page is being indexed by Google. So here's another example of a book I did all the way back in 2014, which I thought was really cool, because when you open this book on your smartphone, on a Kindle reader, for example, the Kindle app, and you click on any of these GPS locations, it actually opens up that location on the mapping app. So you can actually go to the exact location that you want straight from the Kindle book. So this is an interesting way to use, you know, Webify your book. Again, it's taking content from your book and doing it in such a way that it actually adds value to the book. All right, so something I've been working on for quite a while, and I'm just going to mention it here. It's something called BookFlick. So how do we appeal to this Netflix generation? You know, they're accustomed to watching stuff on TV, the streaming generation, and there's a lot of competition for people's attention. So BookFlick is a novel way for authors to essentially bring readers into their content. It might not be the whole book. Maybe it would just be a preview of the book to suck them in and get them engaged. The beautiful thing is with this tool, and I've been doing ebooks since 2009. So as you can imagine, when I design a website, I'm sort of thinking about how it would look on an ebook reader, and things like being able to enlarge the font. I love that in an ebook reader. So why can't you do that? Why shouldn't you be able to do that on a website? The auto scroll is something that I wish ebooks had, but we were able to do it with the website, of course. So you just click a button and the page starts to scroll. So you can just click back, you can kick back and enjoy it. I personally love to read with music, instrumental and atmospheric music. So why not just give readers the ability to listen to something while they're reading your book? And then the narration is huge. So if people are too tired to read and just, again, we're not reading as much anymore, they can listen to it, and you can still scroll the text and give them that ability to just really get engaged with the content. And I think, again, it's a novel way to sort of engage readers. So you can see a preview of it here. And I'm basically starting the sort of early adoption of this. It's just an application of a web technology I've been working on and been using for quite a while. And I think it's going to be really, cool. So if you guys are interested, I would love to hear from you. And the little bonus of it too is to publish to this platform. You simply save a file in a particular Dropbox folder, and it automatically publishes to your own domain. So that's a little bit about BookFlick. All right, and I didn't want to go too deep. I want to leave time for questions, but that is what I wanted to cover as far as Webify your book. And if you want to talk about your book specifically, because I think that every book is got a different opportunity, and I have lots of ideas on ways you might be able to Webify your book, I encourage you to take advantage of, I always offer a free 15-minute consultation. And again, I have a really deep knowledge in book publishing and self-publishing, as well as websites now. So it's kind of a unique strength that I have. Also, if you just want to read about different things that I try to publish these tech tips once a month for authors, and you can go to this website here and check that out. And yep, that's the last slide. So April, that's what I had. Maybe we'll take questions.
Yes, I did receive a few questions.
Great.
And if anyone else has questions, feel free to post them in the chat or raise your hand if you want to be unmuted. The first question says, do you recommend an author website have links to videos about their books?
Yes, but I think what's best is if you can embed the video right on the website so they don't have to leave. So if you notice, what Facebook and Amazon and YouTube try very hard to do is keep people from leaving their website. And in the eyes of Google, the longer that a visitor is on the website, the more relevant it is. So the best thing you do with a video is you keep them on your website longer, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes. If they're sitting there watching the video on your website, it actually gives you a lot of Google juice to help rank your site higher. So I would definitely use video, but I would embed it on your website as opposed to just linking it directly to another site, which then gets the Google juice.
Is there a recommended length of these types of videos?
We're a short attention span society right now. I mean, it seems to be something with good music, lots of motion. I think 3 to 5 minutes is really people's capacity. That I think that's typically the length of previews on Audible as well. If you look at the length of a preview that they offer for an audiobook, pretty well researched too. I'm sure that'll hold people's attention. But if you can get the point across in the first 30 seconds, and a lot of times a reader won't even give you more than 30 seconds. If they're not turned on and engaged within that first 30 seconds, you've already lost them. So I think it's the first 30 seconds are key.
You had mentioned of if readers post reviews on Amazon, trying to get them to post it on your own website. So
yes,
how do you get a reader to post a review on both Amazon and then your own website? Or is your goal to get them to post on one and then you move the review to the other?
If Amazon's the first place, but it seems to be, and I'm in this business of we gather reader reviews. I mean, that's one of the things that we do for authors. And it's so frustrating because we're getting emails where they posted a review, but the review got taken down. I would take them first to your website, and especially if this is someone who knows you, to just have a button, and again, make it super easy and just say, Amazon sometimes doesn't allow these reviews. Just so that we don't lose this review, we'd love to have a copy of it. Would you mind sending us a copy of your review before you send it to Amazon? If in the best case scenario, that's what you would do. Again, these are people you could try to offer them a little incentive. Amazon sort of frowns on that, but I think whatever you got to do to get that review, and it's not going to work every time, and all you can do is ask. But if you can get a copy of that review, it's going to just save you a lot of grief, because it's just so frustrating when you work hard to get that review and then the person tries to leave it, and it's out of your hands, really. That's the problem. I see a question in the chat from Lisa about a first-time author. If the book has not been published, can you set up an author page on Amazon? You can't, but what you can do is you can set up a Kindle book pretty easily. You just need a front cover, and you need something, even if it's just like an early version of your book. You need to go ahead and upload that to KDP and create a Kindle book. And then what you can do is you've created a book, trust me, nobody's going to just stumble upon it. You have to point people to it. There's so many books published every day. So it's going to somewhat be a needle in a haystack. So people aren't going to just find it. But that'll allow you to then to create a Amazon author page, and then you can go and unpublish that book on Kindle, and your author page will remain. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, please report back if that's not the case, but everything I've seen, I haven't actually done that sequence, but there's no reason why it shouldn't work. Because I've published Kindle books and then we've unpublished them, and the author still has an account.
Brian, in your talk about adding additional material on a website to Webify the book, would you recommend password protecting it?
You know, I don't, only because then you're going to be dealing with some customer service issues that people can't access your content. I'm a bigger fan of hidden URLs. So you have a URL that you send people to that isn't published anywhere on your website. And what you want to, I mean, the nice thing is if for some reason that person does share that URL with someone else, you know, you're bringing someone new to get introduced to you. What I would tell you is don't necessarily put all of the content on one URL. You might want to break your content up a little bit, but I love the hidden URL aspect. It's low maintenance. It doesn't create any friction to the user getting it. And a lot of people don't even like to create accounts because they have too many accounts. They have too many passwords, and they don't know you, and they don't really trust the site. So the moment you ask them to create an account and create a password, that creates a barrier to entry. But you know, you may be just talking about a password that you provide. And again, the same problem is you're going to have people who struggle with that for whatever reason. You make it as simple as possible, they're still going to potentially have an issue. But it's totally up to you. If you feel that, you know, you want to password protect it because you want to know who's seeing the content, it's something you can certainly do. But it's just, you be prepared that you're going to have to also handle a little bit of customer service in resolving whatever issues arise.
And the follow-up question to that is, if this material is free and we're doing this to Webify our book rather than updating the hard or the physical book, then how do we get additional income? How do we make more money from this book?
Well, if you're basically on the page, the sales page for your book, you mentioned that the purchase price includes lifetime updates. And this isn't for everybody, for sure. I mean, I have, the reality is Brenda gets new readers every year when she publishes a new book on Amazon, and she does it even more frequently than once a year. But I think she's using the unlimited updates as a value add to people to buy the book. So reality is, I mean, unless you think your book has been changed enough to warrant someone, like, you know, the most popular and one of the most successful stories is the What Color Is Your Parachute, where they update those every year, and nobody wants the 2018 edition when the 2019 version's out. But the changes are fairly minimal that they're making. So they're able to do it, but generally, I think Brenda feels that, you know, she may change 30% of the book, but does it warrant forcing your reader to go out and buy a new version? The other thing is, I'm pretty sure that because we're using the same listing on Amazon, even though you publish a new version, when that buyer comes back to the Amazon page, they're not going to have the option to buy a new version because it's going to say this book is already on your bookshelf. And one thing that they sort of do is at their discretion is they're updating people who purchased the book in the past. And it's become more and more difficult to work with them to update people's books. So the reader has to then go back to Amazon and say, I understand there's a new edition of this book. Can you please update it on my reader? And they actually have to contact customer service to do that. So I think what happened with Brenda is she was getting so much negative feedback from people saying, you know, I have the 14th edition. I want the 15th edition. And she says, well, go to Amazon. And they said, well, I did. And it's still not getting me this updated version. She said, you know what, sign up. I'll send you a copy of the PDF. And, you know, that's a good way to do it. And so she's just building goodwill with her readers. And she's done extremely well. She's got like 450 reviews on Amazon. And I think you want to really give readers more value than they expect. And that's how you get those great reviews. But as far as, getting more income from your readers, people who are full-time authors on Amazon are continually publishing new books. So you've got to keep publishing new content. If you're going to make a career out of this, you can't publish one book and be done with it. There's some rare exceptions where that may work, but that's not going to be very often. Oh, April, I forgot. There was one thing, and for some reason I pulled the slide out of my talk, but let me share my screen again. So I mentioned that I gave an author, I mentioned this in the ad for this webinar, is that I gave an author a 5-figure tip. When I mean 5 figures, I mean 5 figures financially. So this was early in the launching of his book, but Guts and Gunships is the name of the book. And he was about to publish a video on YouTube. And actually his son was helping him with it. And it's this one right here, which, as you can see, it was published 4 years ago, but it now has 2.4 million views. Here's what I told Mark. I said, Mark, because he was just about to do it, I said, make sure you include a link to your book in the description, and you got to make sure you have the HTTP in front of it. You can actually, today it would be HTTPS, but make sure you've got it and it's a live link on Amazon, because live link to the book on Amazon, because what's going to happen is people are going to be inspired in this moment. This is a 2-minute and 42-second video. They're going to be inspired in the moment to make that purchase. And you want to make sure that when they click here, it goes straight to Amazon and they can buy the book. As a result, he sells 10-to-1 Kindle edition over his paperback. So he's done extremely well. He's one of my 6-figure authors, and I'm not going to take credit for all 6 figures, but I will say that some of the things I've told him have saved his butt. And it's those little things, because when I come across videos on YouTube and there's no link to the book, I'm just like, oh, if I could only give that author that advice. This also is a good example to show you having all the editions of your book available. So Kindle, audiobook, hardcover, and paperback. This has been a surprise to me in the last couple of years, that hardcover books have sold extremely well, especially when Amazon prices the hardcover the same as the paperback, which in this case is kind of crazy that they're doing this, because the retail price is $25.99. When they discount the list price, it comes out of their profit, not yours. So they're basically taking a bath on the sale of this book. And I don't know if it's a glitch in their system or what, but it's nice to see. And as a result of getting his book published on a hardcover, it's sold extremely well. I would also tell you that there's a lot of people who buy books that are not price sensitive like we think they are. So when they see there's a hardcover edition available, they're going to many times buy the hardcover edition simply because that's what they prefer, as opposed to the paperback. So if you're not aware of it, you can set it up through Ingram Spark, and this is hardcover print on demand. You still don't pay for any books unless the books are sold, and they're still shipping within a few days. So yeah, they're not delaying that too much. But yeah, Mark's done extremely well, and he's one of these rare birds because this is his one book, and his one book has done extremely well since 2015 when he published it. In fact, well, it's fallen down in the rankings now because he's not doing much to market it, but he was in the top 10 for years. Any other questions, April?
I received one more. It says, Webifying definitely looks a lot easier for a nonfiction book than a fiction book. But can you discuss upselling that you briefly mentioned upselling?
Yeah, and I will say that definitely fiction authors have their work cut out for them. The best thing you can do is get a audiobook, have multiple versions of your book available. So here's an author here I work with, and he's got the audiobook available. And, as far as upselling for him, it's
Brian,
the fact that
I don't see your screen. I'm not sure if you're trying to share it again.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I forgot. All right, let's go. Okay, see it?
Yes.
All right, so Jimmy has this first book, and he has it as an audiobook as well. So his upsell is additional books in the series. So he's got 4 books. So if he can get readers engaged in the first book, he can certainly get them into the second one. And if you go into the book, in fact, this one, because it was the first one published, I don't think he's got the other books, but you would want to promote the other books in here as well. So an upsell would be offering other books that that you could sell. Now, if you've only got one fiction book, you got to be a little bit more creative. You could, recommend other books to them. You can get a commission when you recommend books on Amazon. And when I say upsell, it's just you're finding other ways to get additional income from a sale. And it is definitely a bigger challenge in fiction books. But, I think the bigger play with fiction books is hopefully getting it made into a screenplay someday, getting into different formats that can be adapted. I don't know if you have anyone else has any suggestions on fiction books. I just gave those couple of examples, but yeah, upselling is a little harder when you're talking fiction, unless you've got other books.
We used to have an expert that was a tips booklet expert. And so one of the ways she discussed about upselling was to pick out a specific aspect of your book and then write a tips booklet, which only had to be, was something like 5,000 words, and then write a little mini book all about that one specific subject.
That's good. And you could also do again, it's more nonfiction, but you've seen the book summaries on Amazon. What I'm seeing publishers do now to combat the fact that the moment they publish a book, somebody else comes around and publishes a summaries book and sometimes can outsell the actual book because, again, people don't want to spend time reading a book. They're publishing their own summaries books now. So that's another way of taking the same content and you're applying it to a different audience. Amazon has these short form books and they actually have a set of readers who've bought other Kindle Shorts, they're called. I think they still call them Kindle Shorts. So you're sort of offering your book to a whole new audience because not everyone likes to read long books. Some people do. So you just have to think about how you might be able to spin your book. The other thing you can do is, look at translations of your book. If you've got that one book, you can explore getting it translated into Spanish, and now you might find success there. I do have an author who's been done very well with the French market with his books, which was kind of a surprise. But is it this one? This book's got translated into Spanish, but you may find that you have a market somewhere else. Yeah, because this book, this guy or this character, this historical, this is a biography about the first fighter pilot, but he has ties back to Paris, and that might be why. And I think he's done well with the pilot. Vietnam memoirs have done extremely well. All the ones I've published, they are extremely popular books, and actually, and overseas, they're in both England and France. Those books sell well. Any more questions?
Those are the ones that I've received. If anyone else has a question, type it quickly.
I'll go ahead and put my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I'll put it in the chat. And again, we can just explore ways to do it. I didn't get into the different web builders, and this is what I would comment on that. So we're talking about, WordPress, Squarespace. It's kind of a conversation that can go on and on. Everybody's got their preference on things. What I would tell you is to work with someone who's familiar with whatever technology they're familiar and most comfortable with. Stick with that. Now, I build static websites because I have complete control over the CSS, the HTML, and the JavaScript, which when you want a site to look a very specific way and do very specific things, you have to have control over all of those. I also find it just very frustrating when I can't get something done. But I have seen other consultants, build websites on other platforms, and there's nothing to say there's anything wrong with those. You just want to pick one that you're comfortable with, or the person that you're working with is comfortable with. And, that's the thing. And what I try to do is give clients the ability to work with the site at their comfort level. Like, it is really easy to go in and just make minor changes, but typically what I will do is I will set up the pages and set up the templates for them and get everything looking the way it wants. And then they can go in and they can post things and make changes. But generally, they leave the initial website design up to me. And I think that's where they get stuck with the other website builders, because they're sort of a deer in the headlights and they're not sure what to do because there's so many options, and they just like, give me a good starting point. And again, I think that's why I feel this is such an advantage for me, because I've worked with authors for so long that I understand that need really well. I've seen lots of different creative ways to do this work. And it's just good to work with someone who's an expertise. So if you're a chiropractor, it would be best for you to work with a web designer, a web developer who knows the chiropractor. If you're a dentist, you should work with a company who knows how to build dentist sites. If you're an author, you should work with someone who knows how to build author sites. So that's just my my thought on the different web technologies out there.
Okay, if there are no other questions, and if you have nothing else, I'm going to take back over the controls, Brian.
Sounds good, April. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes, thank you very much.
And thank you, everyone, for being on.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for all the great information you shared with us today. There's been a lot of material to take away. I've got an entire page of notes. Thank you. I've learned a lot. Thank you to our audience members for joining us tonight. We hope you have enjoyed being here at NAWI's monthly expert webinar. For more information on our trainings, please visit www.nawi.com/training. I would like to remind you to visit the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors at naiwe.com to sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Edge: Success Strategies for People Who Work with Words. If you are not a member, you can join within the next 7 days using the code WEBINAR to get $30 off your first year's automatic renewal. If you are a writer or editor, I invite you to join the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors. Membership in the association offers many benefits, including a free website, webinars and informational articles from our outstanding board of experts, book promotions, career promotions, and much more. We're the professional association with the career building difference. If you are a member of the National Association of Independent Writers and Editors, and you have published a book in the last 5 years, submit your book to be considered for an upcoming book chat on the Freelance Life. If you have completed something noteworthy or received an award, you may submit a request to be considered for Member of the Month. Both submissions may be sent to editor@nawi.com. This is your host, April Michelle Davis, wishing you a good day. Thank you and goodbye.